Those who shed tears for a jersey, who dedicate their lives to it, who become legends and live on in the hearts of millions. But what if those very heroes one day choose to wear the colours of their sworn rivals? That moment isn't just a transfer, it's a betrayal that echoes through the soul of a fanbase. History is filled with these acts of treachery. A single decision by a player can plunge countless hearts, once overflowing with love, into the darkest pits of hate. These stories prove one thing above all: football is never just a game. If you're ready, let's dive into the greatest betrayals the sport has ever seen. But first, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because football is best when the passion is shared. Undoubtedly, one of the most scandalous, most explosive transfers in football history. A saga so sensational that, even a quarter of a century later, it's still being talked about. Documentaries have been made about it. Debates still rage on. The transfer? Luis Figo to Real Madrid. But this wasn't just a simple move between rivals, it was a chain reaction that reshaped football forever. Had this transfer not happened, we might never have heard the name Florentino Perez, now the godfather of world football and Real Madrid's president for over 2 decades. Back in the 2000 presidential elections, Perez's biggest campaign promise was bold: "I'll bring you Figo." His rival, Lorenzo Sanz, and most of the football world laughed it off. No chance. Because Figo wasn't just a good player from the rival side, he was Barcelona, captain, face of the club, Ballon d'Or winner, and arguably the best player on the planet. At the title celebrations, with a mic in his hand, he taunted Madrid in front of a roaring Camp Nou. "Madrid's little babies, bow before the champions." It was the ultimate provocation, the kind social media lives for. And speaking of which, if you're a fellow social media wanderer, check out our Instagram and TikTok. We'd love to have you there. Back to our story. Barcelona was calm. Figo denied the rumours personally. His teammates trusted him. After all, who would ever pay the €60 million release clause? That was their safety net. But Perez? His mind didn't operate like a regular man's. He went behind the scenes, sent intermediaries, and wasn't just ready to pay the $60 million. He also offered up eye-watering commissions to pull it off. At the same time, Barcelona was preparing for their own club elections. There was a power vacuum, and Perez capitalized on the chaos. He sat down with Figo's agent and made his move. To this day, Figo claims he never personally agreed to the transfer. He blames his agent. The agent, in turn, says Figo knew everything. One of them is lying, that's certain. But here's what's not up for debate. On the 24th of July 2000, Real Madrid unveiled Luis Figo in a white jersey and broke the world transfer record in the process. Barcelona fans never forgave him. When he returned to Camp Nou in a Madrid kit, they threw a pig's head onto the pitch. Yes, an actual pig's head. It remains one of the wildest scenes ever witnessed in football. And no matter how much Figo insists he was tricked, for Barca fans, he'll always be the lead actor in football's ultimate betrayal. By the late 2000s, Spain's rise in world football was undeniable. They didn't just win 3 consecutive major tournaments, they changed the game forever. The traditional holding midfielder was reimagined through Sergio Busquets, and a new breed of playmakers, born from the urgency of regaining possession, emerged in the form of Iniesta, Xavi, and Xabi Alonso. And when you spoke about strikers in that era, one name was always near the top: Fernando Torres. He was like a perfect blend of 2 classic profiles, the strong target man and the swift, opportunistic poacher. He had the physique, the pace, and the touch. He'd glide through defenders with ease. He could play with his back to goal, win aerial duels, and finish with deadly precision. In short, Torres was the complete striker. Born and raised at Atletico Madrid, he became their captain at a young age. And when the phrase "you'll never walk alone" appeared stitched onto his captain's armband, fate started drawing a red line straight to Liverpool. He joined the Reds and reached the peak of his career. For the first time since Steven Gerrard, the Anfield faithful truly fell in love with a player again. Torres scored 81 goals in 142 appearances. He was electric. But back then, Liverpool wasn't the club you joined to lift trophies. In his final season there, they finished 7th in the league. The club was up for sale, and rebuilding a winning team could have taken years, Torres later said. "I didn't have that kind of time. I had to find my own path, and Chelsea offered me a chance to win." Damien Comolli, Liverpool's sporting director at the time, negotiated the deal, £50 million from Chelsea, and his take? They overpaid for a player who didn't want to be here anymore. At the time, no one could argue Torres wasn't worth the fee, but history would prove Comolli right. For Liverpool fans, he became a traitor. Number 9 Torres shirts were burned in the streets, and when he stepped onto the Anfield pitch as an opponent for the first time, the banners said it all. Traitors walk alone. Had Torres kept up his Liverpool form in blue, the bitterness may have lasted forever, but it felt like part of his magic stayed behind in Merseyside. Injuries slowly, painfully dragged him down. He went 24 consecutive games without scoring for Chelsea, and he was never the same again. In 2024, he returned to Anfield for a charity match, wearing red one more time, and finally making peace with the crowd he once broke. Just before the summer of 2012, Manchester United suffered one of the most heartbreaking title losses in Premier League history, losing the crown to their fiercest rivals in the most dramatic fashion imaginable. And in moments like these, there's only one fast track back to contention: sign the league's deadliest striker. Robin van Persie had joined Arsenal at the age of 20. In the post-Henry, post-Bergkamp era, he was the club's most promising face. A magician with the ball and a sniper in front of goal, his numbers kept climbing, season after season. The only problem? Arsenal could no longer compete like they used to. Wenger's side, once United's biggest threat, had been pushed aside by the rise of Chelsea and Manchester City. Still, Van Persie kept Arsenal in the fight, one goal at a time. The Emirates trusted him above all. He wore the captain's armband with pride, and in his 8th and final season in London, he scored 30 goals, winning the Premier League Golden Boot. But even that wasn't enough to pull Arsenal into the title race, which was now a Manchester-only affair. The Flying Dutchman was ready to fly the nest. The deal was sealed for £24 million. Sir Alex Ferguson put it simply, the boy wanted us. He turned down other clubs. If he hadn't told Arsenal he wanted United, the transfer wouldn't have happened. Van Persie himself put it more poetically, I listened to the little boy inside me. That line crushed Arsenal fans even more. It was the definition of a perfect signing. Van Persie not only retained his golden boot wearing red, he also finally won the Premier League title that had eluded him for 8 long years. Now, 13 years later, Van Persie has taken charge of Feyenoord, returning to the club where it all began, this time as head coach. And when asked just weeks before his appointment about the possibility of one day managing Arsenal, he was honest. I think the door closed the day I went to Manchester United, he said. It's still a sensitive subject. Not for me, but definitely for the fans. My players always dream of joining the best teams in the world, but if they stayed here, we could have been the best team in the world. Hard to argue with Master Clippetto on that one. For years, Bayern Munich dominated German football with a simple yet ruthless strategy: buy the best players from their rivals. And before Bayer Leverkusen dared to challenge that status quo, there was only one team that truly shook the throne: Klopp's Dortmund. Blending bargain signings with academy-grown talent, Jurgen built a machine. They won back-to-back Bundesliga titles in 2011 and 2012, leaving Bayern in the dust. And leading the charge was a homegrown star, Mario Götze. But by the season's end, the rumours had reached a boiling point. Götze was heading to Bayern. The news lit a fire in the Dortmund stands. In that wild night when Borussia Dortmund thrashed Real Madrid with 4 goals, every time Götze touched the ball, he was whistled. Banners read, Götze out. It got so intense, he had to travel to training under police escort. Then came the final blow. Bayern activated his €37 million release clause. Just like that, Dortmund's golden boy was gone. What's strange is that, despite bringing in money, Götze faced far more backlash than Lewandowski ever did. Maybe it was because he came through Dortmund's academy. Maybe it was because his move foreshadowed Lever's departure. 1 year later, Lewandowski left for free, signing with Bayern under the Bosman rule. The team that had won 2 Bundesliga titles lost both its number 9 and number 10 to their fiercest rival. Since then, Dortmund have yet to win the league again. While Götze would return 3 years later and be welcomed back with open arms, his body wasn't the same. Injuries had taken their toll. Lewandowski, meanwhile, built his own empire in Munich and scored 27 goals against his former club, becoming Dortmund's ultimate tormentor. Transferring to a rival club isn't a decision most players make lightly. You need nerves of steel, because people will hate you for it. and you have to be ready for that. Let's hear from Zlatan Ibrahimovic himself. "I'd rather be hated than loved. When people say they love you, you can never be sure, but if they say they hate you, believe me, they mean it." A man with that mindset doesn't tiptoe around "what will they think." At just 23, Zlatan left Ajax for Juventus, saying ciao to Serie A in style. He was already one of Europe's most sought-after strikers when, in 2006, Juventus were relegated due to the infamous Calciopoli scandal. No doubt Pavel Nedved's famous quote, "When a team gets relegated, footballers leave, men stay," wasn't referring to Zlatan. The Swede had no intention of playing in Serie B, and when the Giants from Turin went down, he seized the moment to join the rising force in Italian football, Inter Milan. Needless to say, that choice was never forgiven in Turin. But as we've said, Zlatan couldn't care less. Later in his career, he'd also play for Inter's fiercest rival, AC Milan. But because that transfer wasn't direct, Inter fans didn't treat it like treason. Or maybe by then, Zlatan had simply built an aura of untouchability, a myth too bold to boo. And then there's Barcelona. When Zlatan decided to leave the Camp Nou, he told club president Sandro Rosell, flat out, he wanted to join Real Madrid. The president, of course, couldn't let that happen. So instead of cashing in for far more, he offloaded Zlatan to Milan for €24 million. Because with Zlatan, it was never just about the money. It was about control, power, and doing things the Zlatan way. In the early stages of his career, Andrea Pirlo wore the black and blue of Inter, but in a crowded midfield, he struggled to find his place. It wasn't until he crossed the city divide and joined AC Milan that the world saw what he truly was. Not just one of Serie A's best, but one of the greatest midfielders on the planet. There were whispers that Pep Guardiola, a huge admirer, once tried to bring Pirlo to Barcelona. And honestly, he was never far behind Xavi or Iniesta in vision or control. Pirlo became a pillar of that legendary Milan side, making over 400 appearances, winning 2 Champions League titles, and cementing his name among the club's all-time greats. But then came the summer of 2011, and a turning point. Milan seemed convinced that, at 32, Pirlo's best years were behind him. They didn't offer him a new contract, a decision Andrea would quickly prove to be a mistake. But for him, it wasn't just about boardroom decisions. "Massimiliano Allegri wanted me to play on the left side of midfield," he later said. "But I always gave my best just in front of the defense. A fish breathes best in deep waters. Allegri wanted to drag me to the surface." Juventus saw the opportunity and signed one of the world's best midfielders for free. Milan believed they had simply lost an aging, declining player. Pirlo answered with 4 straight Serie A titles. And while the decision had come from the club, not the player, Milan fans never called him a traitor. But for 4 long years, they watched the genius they once had from afar, with nothing but admiration and regret. Italy has long been divided, north and south, and football, of course, could never stay immune to that divide. The north is industrialized, wealthy, and powerful. The south, on the other hand, is poorer, often neglected, with higher unemployment and less political influence. Juventus, based in Turin, represents the elite north. Napoli is the voice of the south, the people's club. While transfers between rivals are more common in Italy than elsewhere, one move in 2016 reopened old wounds. This time rooted not just in football, but in class. Gonzalo Higuain had arrived in Napoli from Real Madrid, and he wasted no time fitting in. After all, this was Maradona's club, a place where Argentine legends were celebrated like saints. For 3 seasons in Naples, Higuain was relentless. He scored and scored and scored again. Napoli, for once, were real title contenders. And in his final season, Higuain netted 36 goals in 35 matches to claim the Golden Boot. But all of that wasn't enough. Juventus came calling and paid €90 million to take him north. To Napoli fans, it wasn't just a betrayal, it was sacrilege. The city responded with fury. Toilet paper with Higuain's face hit the shelves, garbage trucks were decorated with his posters. Even Roma legend Francesco Totti weighed in. Today's footballers are like nomads. They follow money, not their hearts. Higuain's first season at Juve wasn't terrible, but as the years went on, the goals dried up. The headlines shifted, from his performances to his nightlife, from his finishes to his fitness. And in the end, Gonzalo Higuain's name was remembered not for what he achieved, but for the heart he broke. It wouldn't be wrong to call him one of the best left-backs of his generation. Ashley Cole wasn't quite as tabloid-shaking as the Beckham-Victoria duo, but his marriage to Cheryl from Girls Aloud certainly pushed him into the celebrity spotlight. On the pitch, Ashley was lightning fast, relentless in stamina, a defensive wall. Getting past him was a battle. Cristiano Ronaldo once called him the toughest opponent I've ever faced. Until the summer of 2006, Ashley Cole was one of Arsenal's crown jewels. A product of the academy, a gunner since the age of 9, he had won 2 Premier League titles and was a proud member of the legendary Invincibles squad. He was destined to be a future captain, but after 228 appearances, he made a move that would shatter his legacy. With 2 years left on his contract and ranked among the best in his position, he expected a renewal fitting of his value. But according to Ashley, the offer Arsenal made nearly made him crash his car in anger. Chelsea came knocking, Mourinho wanted him, and Roman Abramovich was never shy about writing checks. The deal was sealed, £5 million plus William Gallas. At the time, Chelsea was still struggling to be taken seriously by the old guard, but this transfer changed everything. It wasn't just a move, it was a statement, a new chapter in the London rivalry. From that day on, Arsenal fans stopped calling him Ashley. He became Cashley. Fake £20 notes with his face on them were handed out before matches. To them, he had chosen money over loyalty. He had betrayed his boyhood club, but Cole saw it differently. "I didn't ask for Henry money or Vieira money. I just wanted to feel valued. They agreed on terms at first, then backed out. Arsenal was my childhood dream. I get it. The fans felt hurt. But the truth is, no one was more hurt than I was."